Thank you very much. As he said, my name is Nick Biasini. I am here to talk to you about the Infosec time machine. The basic idea behind this is we've known how to secure systems and secure networks now for well over a decade, actually closing in on multiple decades. But for some reason, we fail to implement basic security concepts time and time again. The real purpose of this talk is to kind of reintroduce you to the concepts that were introduced 15, 20 years ago, and talk about how simple application of those concepts could not necessarily mitigate some of the biggest threats we've seen over the last year and a half, but how our failures to implement these controls have resulted in these attacks being much worse than they need to be, and in many cases could stop them altogether. Before I get too deep into it, though, who am I? My name is Nick Biasini. I'm a threat researcher from Cisco Talos. As far as my background is concerned, I actually started as an analyst in a 24/7 SOC working for the U.S. government. Over the years, I was an analyst, lead analyst, managed teams of analysts. I was an IDS engineer. I was a SIM engineer, anomaly detection system engineer, did design. I've basically done everything in security except for being a developer because I frankly suck at coding and nobody wants to see the code that I write. But really what I do now more than anything is I have in my opinion, the best job in the world. I hunt threats and piss off bad guys. That's really what my job is. What I mean by that is, I need to keep track of what's going on a day-to-day basis in the threat landscape, what we see every single day. But I take it further than that, right? It's also about writing about it. It's about blowing up their infrastructure. It's about working with providers to get their systems taken down. It's doing whatever we can to force them to spend money and make them angry, because hopefully the more we do that, the less this type of activity will someday be. Not anytime soon, though, because job security is important, and we all agree. All right. So no time to really explain. Let's just jump right into it, right? Let's start by going back. Back to the days with times like these. Times when, this was cutting edge technology. Or my favorite, when you used to tell people that you worked in security, they immediately pictured this. That's right, I'm talking about the late 90s, early 2000s. The reason I picked this period out specifically is the fact that there was a key document, at least from the U.S. government perspective, NIST 800-53. I know I'm in the UK, but anybody from the US that's worked anywhere near the government has nightmares about this document. It is just a beast of a document. But what it did do is it kind of introduced the general public to what security controls were, what basic security concepts are, and how you need to protect your infrastructure and your networks. And I'm talking about absolutely crazy ideas like asset identification, network segmentation, patching, access control, and education. I know these are all earth-shattering concepts. I'm going to take a little time and kind of walk through all of them, and then I'll kind of reiterate how each of these threats that I'm going to cover would have been addressed by some of these. So let's start with the easiest of all of these, asset identification. You can't defend it if you don't know it exists. If I have to read one more breach report that starts with a server that the company didn't know was connected to the internet, stop doing that. Why do you not know what is connected to the internet inside your network? It's not rocket science. You could do things like ping sweeps, port scans. It's not expensive to spin up an Azure box or an Amazon AWS or whatever cloud you want to use and just start scanning your infrastructure. If you have public IP space, you should be scanning it constantly. You need to know what is there. And once you have an idea, start probing a little deeper, right? Figure out what services are exposed to the internet, what ports are exposed to the internet, what are all of these systems that we have out there. This is really the bedrock of what you have to do in security, and it honestly is where everyone falls down. Because for some reason, people don't track when a new system comes online. When your sweep results change, when the scans that you're doing change, go find out what happened. And then start patching. Please patch. It's not hard, but for some reason, and believe me, I've been in organizations where patching is like the worst cuss word you can say because they do not want downtime. Show them the reports from all of these breaches that we've seen over the last year and a half. Show them the tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in damage. Show them all of these things to illustrate why it's okay to take a 30-minute downtime to help prevent you from being on the front page of a major newspaper. One of the most important aspects around patching, though, is getting buy-in across your entire organization. This was, in one of my previous roles, the most difficult thing I had to do, because I had to herd just a large room of cats, of people from every possible discipline inside of an organization, and get them to agree, by scaring the crap out of them, that patching is something that you have to do. And look, you don't treat all patches the same. No one should. But when you have a high severity patch that you know impacts you, don't wait 60 days to patch anymore. It is not long enough. And I'll illustrate exactly why in a minute. So that's asset identification, right? Let's move on to the one of my biggest pet peeves, network segmentation and the move to flat networks. So I'm old school. I've been in this industry for a lot longer than most, I guess. This is what a network should look like. Clearly segmented, lines drawn, accounting, HR, engineering, operations, just as an example. These groups should not be able to talk to each other on every port, on every system, because they don't need to. All it does is cause problems, but I don't see this anymore. What I see is this. Where you got the internet, you got the outside, you have the inside, and you have this little security bubble in the center. Stop doing this. This is not useful. This is not helping anyone. I understand that executives want all the access to all the data all of the time, right? And this is fast and easy, but that doesn't make it right. Sometimes we need to sit down and do the things that make it difficult. We need to spend the time and do the design, do the implementation, know that there's going to be issues going in, but it's better than this. Okay. Asset control. I kind of break this into three broad categories, right? You have network, you have user, and you have file access control. Now, there's a bad word on here, auditing. That is the one that, at least from my perspective, I used to hate. But in this case, it is absolutely paramount. Because you can assume you have the best access control in the world, but if you don't test it, you really don't know. You don't know that, oh, that directory is only read access to this specific group. But you put it underneath a folder that had inherited privileges that gave everyone read and write access. Did you test that your access worked? Well, no, I just checked the box and assumed everything worked right. Stop doing that. Actually verify what you're implementing. This happens way, way too much and is causing lots and lots of problems. If we don't get better, you do realize the bad guys are getting better, right? They're getting better every single day. If we don't get better, we're not going to do well. I mean, we all know, I assume a good portion of you are defenders. Defender is the most thankless and difficult job you have to do. You have to be infallible. That's it. You cannot have fault in what you do. An attacker, red teaming, you gotta be right once. You can throw 1,000 things up against the wall. As long as one of them sticks, you did your job. As a defender, somebody comes at you 1,000 times and one gets through, absolute failure. This is why we have to get better at securing and doing the things that are basic. All right. So some of you are in operations, I assume. I don't know how many, but let's start with a little test here. So this is one of my kind of litmus tests for how mature a security organization is that I go into. How many rules are on your firewall? And look, I'm not expecting you to say 8,172. That's ridiculous, although some OCD people probably know that. More likely just a general concept, right? This is like the intro question. How many rules are on your firewall? More importantly, can you explain why they are there? Do you know why this rule exists? Or is it, I don't know, it's been here since I started? That's not a good answer to that question. Additionally, and this is key, who put them there? Do you know who put them there? Was it someone in security? Was it someone outside security? Network admins have access to firewalls a lot of times. Just saying. And then the most important one, and the one where people really, really, really typically fall down, is have you reviewed them in the last 6 months? Doesn't take a lot of time. Look at how many hits, reset the counters and look for hits. If you have a firewall rule that has 8,000 hits, it may not be the best firewall rule. Because let me tell you, I cannot tell you how many times I've walked into an environment, 6,000 line ACL, about 2,000 lines down, there's that nice permit IP any, and you realize that the bottom 6,000 or 4,000 rules aren't being used at all, and it's been like that for a year and a half. And they don't understand why they got compromised. This is why you do things like port scans and port sweeps. You have to know what you're defending and how adversaries can get into your infrastructure. Let's talk some user control. This is another fun one. So this is one more question. I swear this is the last one. Where can domain admins log in? If you say anywhere, I'm going to lose it. Okay? That is not the right answer. The right answer is domain controllers. Domain admins should only log into domain controllers. Because let me tell you, adversaries love it when you use your domain admin account to fix a user issue on an end station. Because they pop that system and it's game over. They can just, oh, this is great. I don't have to do anything. We have got to get better at doing the basics. It's not hard. Tier your admins, right? You have an admin for domain controllers. You have an admin for servers, and you have an admin for users. That way, when they pop the admin credentials, all they can do is stick in a tier. It's not hard, but for some reason, we just do not do it. I understand you're going to get pushback from sysadmins, but explain to them, do you want to be the person who leads to us being on the front page of a newspaper? Is it really worth you complaining about having to maintain a couple of different user accounts? Also, don't log into your freaking domain admin account to check your email. Stop doing that. It's not hard. I just don't get it sometimes. And look, we're getting better. I hope. I have to keep telling myself this and just hope that I'm making a difference. At least one or two people, please make it a little bit better, because sometimes it gets pretty dire. One more thing. Users don't need admin access. Stop giving it to them. They don't need it. I don't care. There are exceptions, obviously, but they should be exceptions, not the rule. It shouldn't be, well, that one user got compromised 4 times, so we should take their admin credentials away. No. You take everyone's admin credentials away, and you give them back to the people that need it. It's not hard. But the real reason that you don't give users admin access is because they're users. Let's talk about what I like to call the unpatchable vulnerability. User. Users always see boxes like this and will always click save. Always. It's just in their nature. I don't know why, but it is just in their nature. But before I get too deep into that, I actually have to take some time to talk about macros. Why is this a thing? Why is this a thing in 2018? All I see all day in email is this, or this, or this. And people keep clicking the edit button and enabling content I don't understand. Not only that, but it's not difficult to disable, right? Go back to your office and just do it. Put it in your group policy and get rid of it. They even give you options. And I understand that there are departments that have to run macros. That's fine. There are ways to deal with all of them. Ideally, you just get rid of macros. Gone across the board out of your org. That's your ideal scenario. Most of us don't work in ideal worlds, so it's not really going to matter. But they do have the ability to only run signed macros. I know that can be annoying for the people that have to do macros, and it does implement overhead. But it should help mitigate a lot of your issues. A little less ideal is they block macros downloaded from the internet, which I guess would be okay, but, users probably just going to, instead of click open, click save, and then open it locally, so it kind of defeats the purpose. But at least it would kind of get rid of the worst offenders, and please, God, stop letting macros be a choice for all users all the time. It doesn't end well for anyone, and it never has. But back to the user. This is Steve. Steve's a typical user, causes problems. That's kind of what they do. But truthfully and honestly, it's really not just their fault. A lot of it falls on us. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I mean, in today's society, we increasingly kind of sit in these echo chambers of people that agree with the things that we say. So for the last 10 plus years, people in security have been screaming about users and how bad users are. And then everybody just kind of feeds back into that. You're right, users are terrible. But nobody actually goes and talks to the users and actually works with them. And a big part of that is user education is just utterly and completely broken in almost every organization I've been in and everybody I've talked to. How often have you gone into doing your security education and your testing, and you launch yet another phishing attack, and you have the same user who sends their creds every single time? No matter how sophisticated or how stupid the phish attack is, they're always clicking the button. Now, part of the problem behind that is the way that our user education is built. It's like this. You either click next or you click exit. And most people just click next until exit comes up and they're like, okay, I'm done. Yay. Or better yet, my favorite are the ones that are video based, where you just click play and then go get a cup of coffee or go do real work and then come back after like 15 minutes and click next and click play on the next one and do it again. What is the point of that? There is just no value in that. No one gets anything out of it. But for some reason, you think that users are going to understand concepts like malware, banking trojans, ransomware, spam, phishing. They won't if you don't educate them properly. Now, there's kind of another side to this. We have to change the way that we treat information security policies. Every organization has an information security policy of some sort, right? Every organization has umpteen bajillion policies of some sort, and the information security policy fits in there somewhere. There is typically one key difference, though. It doesn't have teeth. What happens when a user gets their system compromised? Reimage the box. That's the end of it. Nothing happens to the user. And look, I'm not advocating for users being fired for failing a phishing test. That's a little bit extreme. But it has to be part of the conversation, right? When you go to do your reviews, to get your bonuses, to get your raises, the information security team should be involved in that process. Saying things like, you know what? I understand that they did a great job, but you have to understand that they compromised themselves 3 times last year. And that cost us, the security team, $50,000 to mitigate them. Do you really want to give a bonus, this huge bonus, to someone who cost the company $50,000? These are the types of things that you have to start having conversations around. Because let me tell you, you start hitting users in their wallets, they'll actually listen because it costs them money. They now have some sort of skin in the game, right? Otherwise, it's like, I don't care. I'll just click yes to everything because nothing happens to me. There's no consequence to what I do. But it's not just consequences, right? Then you just seem like a bunch of asses. You gotta have some sort of reward there as well. And this isn't hard, right? Every organization has some sort of a monthly, quarterly, yearly, and whatever, bi-yearly meeting where they talk about the state of the company, right? Take 5 or 10 minutes and call out people that did the right thing. Say, I want to take a few seconds and congratulate Susie. She did the right thing by reporting the suspicious email that she received. Upon further investigation, it was a targeted attack that would have potentially cost us very large sums of money. And as a thank you for that, I'm going to throw her a $100 gift card somewhere. It's a very, very small gesture, but it absolutely resonates with people. When you reward them for doing the right thing and penalize them for doing the bad thing, you're basically treating them like children, which is effectively what they are. You have to take that approach because it really works. I know it sounds stupid, but people have been raising kids that way for hundreds and hundreds of years. But for some reason with users, we're just like, no, they can just do whatever they want and we'll just fix it afterwards. This is not a good way. Basically, we have a bunch of brats running around our networks and it does not do anyone any good. Okay, enough of that. I'm going to quickly climb off my soapbox there. I'll touch briefly on users again at the end in another aspect that I want to dig into. But let me first talk about threats that we've seen over the last year plus and how basic protections would have either mitigated them completely or at least limited the damage they would have had. Let's start with BadRabbit. BadRabbit was a ransomware worm that started with a post request where the user would be, basically their system would get fingerprinted, they would send some data off to a system, and then based on that, they would either be directed to nowhere or given a fake Flash player update. And that should be the end of BadRabbit, because no one should install a Flash player off of a pop-up. Users should be educated enough to know not to do that. This should not have been a thing. That should have been the end of it. It should have been like, well, they really tried, but who's really dumb enough to fall for this? Turns out a lot of people. And once you had one user, your life got exponentially worse, because then it started worming and moving around your network and gathering credentials and trying hard-coded credentials like this. God, Sex, Secret, and Love. Those look oddly familiar. Did you guys get the memo on those? You know, the memo from this guy? Come on. No? Yes, hackers have a sense of humor. We see them make pop culture references all the time. This particular thread actually was kind of laden with them. They actually made a couple of Game of Thrones references as well. But besides the point, how could this have been eliminated with basic protections? First and foremost, user education. Why are you installing Flash Player from an update that just pops up on your system? You know, we have corporate IT. We install patches and things. If you need something, ask for something. Don't just randomly click install. By the way, you probably shouldn't have admin access to be able to do it anyway, but that's another point altogether. Again, network segmentation. I'm going to beat network segmentation to death in this presentation because without a doubt, it is the most important thing that you can do to help minimize impact. So yes, you might have had a dumb user in some department allow that to be installed, and that department could be completely decimated, but your entire enterprise isn't. And odd as it sounds, you should take some solace in that. Because a lot of organizations, when these types of threats happen, do not lose one department. They lose 40, 50,000 machines. Network segmentation is a thing that needs to be done all the time. I'm going to talk a little Wannacry. Everybody loves Wannacry. You know, the OG ransomware worm that was out there. This happened May of last year, something like that. I'm not really going to talk about Wannacry because Wannacry has been talked about to death. What I am going to talk about is why you can't have a 60-day patch cycle. So this is the security bulletin that addressed all the vulnerabilities that were in Wannacry. It was released on March 14th, 2017. A month to the day later, all of these tools were dumped online publicly. May 12th was the day that Wannacry ravaged the internet. Guess how many days it is between the 14th of March and the 12th of May? 59. Do not do a 60-day patch cycle. This is why. 60-day patch cycles don't work when you have a CVSS severity 10 vulnerability that affects every system that Windows runs. Not to mention that this is kind of besides the point, but why in the world do you have port 445 or SMB open to the internet? Are you trying to allow people to connect to file shares inside of your network? I do not understand why this was such a horrible problem. It spread via SMB. Home users should have been absolutely destroyed. Even they should have been somewhat protected. That was a little baffling to me. Are you like directly connecting to the internet? How does that work? Because everybody has some sort of a router or something. Are you purposely allowing SMB to be allowed into your house from the internet? I just don't understand. That seems like a really sophisticated thing for an average user to do for very limited value. Sorry. Again, patching. Stop using 60-day patch cycles. Patch your systems. And for the love of God, segment. This one in particular just destroyed networks. Well, I shouldn't say this one was the worst. This one was the worst. This is the one where segmentation, if you didn't have it, it would just cut through your network like absolute butter. Nyetya, or not Pecha. This is the one that I point most organizations to when they're like, well, implementing network segmentation is really expensive and difficult, and it takes a lot of time and engineering to do. I'm like, yes, but do you want to be Maersk? Do you want to be one of the organizations that lost 40,000 systems? And to their credit, look, they had to do incredible stuff. If you haven't read the story about NotPetya and what they had to do, it's amazing. I mean, they were literally handing off servers in airports in Africa to get the domain controllers back because they had one that didn't get destroyed. And that is what they were trying to save, to get the disks back to be able to rebuild everything. Don't be that company. They had to reimage 30,000 systems. I would just quit my job. I would just be like, I'm sorry, I'm out. This is just I'm not doing this. This is way, way too much. But how did this work? What did this do? And it was obviously, look, these controls are not going to stop this attack. This was a supply chain attack. The initial infection vector is extremely sophisticated. You're not going to avoid the initial infection. But what you can do is try and mitigate the damage. So once it got into a system, it used a bunch of different things. This is actually in reverse order. So it used Eternal Blue and Eternal Romance as fallbacks, which are obviously should be patched by that point. It also used WMI and PSExec. This brings me to another point. Why can all users use WMI? I don't understand. What does an average user have to gain from the ability to use WMI? And look, I understand there is extreme value in both WMI and PSExec for sysadmins. There absolutely is. It's a hugely valuable tool. But why every user on a network is able to use it, you are going to get killed if you leave those tools. Even if they're not there by default, having simple logic, command line logging, look at the commands that are being run. The syntax is all the same if the file name changes. You have to be looking at that stuff. It is of paramount importance. And then this was propagation. So yeah, this was the WMI. This, I don't get. It doesn't make sense to me why every user can do this. Again, basic concepts, patching. Not rocket science, but you have to do it. Simple user access control. Stop giving everyone access to WMI. And look at that. Network segmentation again. I'm telling you, I'm going to beat it to death because it is the most important thing you can do. Okay. So I have one more here. Limp Destroyer. So this one was particularly nasty and pretty destructive. Look at that. It used WMI and PSExec again. What are the odds? You have got to be better at doing this. The initial infection vector for this one is a little bit cloudy as well, but hopefully you could mitigate the issue. Now, there are way more aspects to this. So it did spread around systems and was hot patching and gathering credentials and adding those credentials to the attack it was launching. But one of the other things it was doing was just destroying systems. And it was doing this by, connecting to file shares, gathering the credentials, turning off all the services on the systems. Some of the things can be avoided, some of them cannot. One of them that would be key to look at is file access control. Why does everyone have read-write access to every share on the network? Probably shouldn't be that way. Your user access control has to be better. Your file access control has to be better. And again, network segmentation, because you can't move around a network if you segment it properly. Make it difficult for them. Make them make noise so that your security team has a chance. You have to catch the noise that's coming around these attacks. And look, I mentioned before, I'm going to circle back to users. There's actually another aspect of user education that I think is of paramount importance. And this is that we are currently in the midst of a giant generational gap. The overwhelming majority of people do not understand the stuff that we understand, even remotely, and we expect them to. That has to change. We have to realize that the majority of people barely understand the concept of the internet or email or web browsing, let alone ASLR and authentication bypass and exploitation and vulnerabilities and malware and banking trojans and ransom. They don't know what any of this stuff is. We have to do better at bringing up the entire education level of people in general. So kind of my last thing here is, as security people, right, in your organization, when you're dealing with users, have patience. Take time, work with them, and explain to them, hey, the reason why we do this stuff is because of all of these types of threats. Like you see here, you see how you clicked this link and then hit this button to send your credentials? You shouldn't do that. When you get an email that says your credentials have expired or your password's been stolen, don't click a link. Go and log into the website yourself. Take the extra steps. Educate them. I know this sounds horrible, but educate them one user at a time. Because they talk amongst themselves. They're going to educate each other, but we have to start somewhere. Adversaries continue to get better and better at what they do. And if we don't really seriously address the underlying issues, like every time you see an attack that involves ODay, where an advanced adversary used ODay to get into an infrastructure, right? I've always said that that enterprise should wear that like a badge of honor, because you have already forced them to spend way, way, way more money and resources than they wanted to get in. Because I got news for you. A determined adversary, they're not going to be stopped. They're going to do whatever is necessary. They're also not going to start with ODay, because that's stupid and it costs them a lot of money. Why would they do that when they can send an email with a Word document with a macro in it that has 9 pop-ups, and a user will still click through every single one of them, click enable, and download the malware to get them into the network? This is the world that we're living in, and we have to be much better at what we do. All right, final point. Cover your assets, patch your assets. Please stop giving users admin. I understand there are exceptions, but the blanket user, like, I need to install something, here, I'll just give you admin access. Don't do that. I understand it's painful and it's time consuming and it can be arduous for you, but you have to stop making the stupid mistakes. The small mistakes are the things that'll kill you. And I'm going to tell you right now, all it takes is you granting a user admin and some huge fire starting, and you forget about the user you gave admin, and 2 months later they get popped and own the entire infrastructure, and it's all because you didn't want to install a software package at that time. Oh, and maybe segment your network a few times. It's pretty important. That's probably the big takeaway from this is please, please, please segment your network and do the things that are basic. Secure your network like it's 1999, because honestly, in a lot of cases, it's far better than the stuff that we're doing today. All right, that's all I got. Does anybody have any questions?
Awesome, thank you. Questions? Lady over here.
Hi. So you talked about like negative incentives, essentially, on users that are failing to keep up. Mm-hmm. Have you experienced any issues with respect to that have resulted in a sort of adversarial relationship with your users? Because my understanding from at least some research is that they're essentially your front line of defense as well, in terms of them reporting problems. Like, even if they've clicked through something, even if they've done something really insanely stupid, they are the people who are also going to say, hi, I just did something terrible.
Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why I always say that the concept is kind of you need the carrot and the stick. So yes, you need to punish them for doing bad things, but when they do right things, even if they get compromised, if you get compromised and you immediately call security, you did the right thing. The worst thing you can do is just click and be like, the command prompt just popped up after I did that. It's probably nothing. Don't do that. Like that's where users tend to fall down, is when they do stuff like that. I emphasize the reward side of that as a big part of it, because if you don't have the reward, absolutely, you are going to have a very adversarial relationship. Now, one of the added bonuses that I forgot of doing the reward aspect is probably the biggest challenge in security right now is people. We cannot find people to do this. You'd be amazed when you start actually tracking the people that are doing the right thing. The same people keep popping up over and over and over again. And you know what? Maybe you found yourself a security-minded individual that is already in your enterprise, that already understands a lot of what you do, that can fill that rec that's been sitting open for 2 years because you can't find anyone to take it. It could be an incredible pipeline of building that internal talent as well. Any more questions? It was a good question.
Yep, over there.
Hi, just with your emphasis on network segmentation, I'm wondering what your opinion is on the zero trust network approach.
So everything has its pluses and minuses. It's a balance, right? Like anything, it's a balance. Even with patching, it's the same idea. Like, you kind of have to gauge the temperature of your organization and kind of figure out what their commitment level is, how far they want to take it. You know, there can be pluses and minuses to anything, but the worst thing you can do is implement something that's so ridiculously strict that you get a bunch of pushback on it. It's kind of a take the temperature of the enterprise to figure out what the best approach would be. Good question as well.
Any more? No? All right. Thank you very much again.
Thank you.